today the 2.93 has been released. I don't know when you actually watch this video or when I release this video, but anyway. So, which also means this is a preset library release 2.4.1. The reason I wait for such a long time is because starting from 2.93, the Python library has been changed. So the old animation nodes is no longer compatible in 2.93 anymore. Which means starting from 2.4.1, this node is only this preset library is only available for the 2.93 plus. I guess in the future I will just add 2.4.2 instead of 2.5. It depends on how things get changed, but I do not really see a reason to jump a huge version in the future. But we do not really know. Okay. And another reason actually for this for the compatibility issue is that we're starting to have a node which links animation node to geometry nodes. Technically speaking, it's called custom attributes. So this node only presents for the latest animation nodes, so that you cannot use the old Blender to use this node, to have this node, kind of basically this idea. And I made a preset which is called instancing geometry. I don't think this is actually a correct name, but anyway, because I would like to specify, oh, this node really used for geometry nodes, and it's for instancing. That's why I keep this instancing geometry, or you may call it geometry instancing. Will that be helpful? I don't think so, because it's also compatible with the instancing object. That's kind of regular method when you're using animation nodes. Anyway, we will discuss more detail about this node in the future. And also another thing that when you download this file, you probably realize the file size has been largely reduced. Starting from 2.4.0, basically in the last release, I mentioned that the difference between the 2.4.0 and the 2.3.3 is the file size change, because I'm starting to deleting a lot of nodes that I no longer use. This process is still going on, but I think it's going to end. There are several reasons. One reason is I already deleted tons of nodes. And another reason is that if you go to preference, and in save a node, there is an option which is called compress file. So once you do that, you basically really compress the file a lot, depending on the algorithm of the compression, but like 10 times. So I think now the file size is about 1000 KB. So like almost 1 MB. Which means it's sufficiently small so that we can add a lot of nodes in the future. I'm not sure if I'm going to import the nodes from the past. Maybe I will just redo them if necessary. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure yet. Okay, there are lots of things that need to be thought, because I still do not want to keep a lot of nodes that are not frequently used. So if there is a necessity, I'll just delete them. Otherwise, everything just looks kind of ugly in this node tree, right? And talking about last time I actually haven't discussed lots of the changes within animation nodes. However, it was 2.3.3. Why I have to write this over and over? 2.3.3 is one of the most how should I say? Is the version that contains the most development, because there is basically a boom in the amount of nodes, so that I have to come up with some methods to reduce the amount of nodes in 2.4. But I forgot to mention about all this kind of change. You can read the log, because I made such kind of log for everything. And here we're having the log of 2.4.1. So briefly talking about how to read this kind of log. This log is not really written for me, because I usually remember everything is on the top of my head. So, and I do not really care about all these kind of changes until I found them otherwise. Okay, so basically it's kind of you can actually read. if you're good at English, I guess you can actually kind of guessing the idea. The whole point is there are lots of the name of the nodes, and then there's some changes like size independent on spline radius. What is that? What does it mean? I don't know. Basically, when you're starting a line, it's the name of the nodes. For example, there is a new node which is called the axis value sorter. Axis value sorter. There is a specific reason why I made these nodes. I guess in the future we will start to use them or discuss that one by one. There might be some changes, but I'm not exactly sure. There's other things like trim spline normalized started to have a starting input. So previously it does not have a starting input, but now it does have. This node, I haven't discussed this, but actually there are tutorials that potentially uses that. Follow spline loop. There are lots of change. One important thing is several important things. There is a lot of nodes that are being deleted. Transform list series, we used to have, has been deleted because the developer. I proposed the idea, so the developer actually the special thanks to Blue Fox 3D, he vectorized all these kind of nodes. So for example, transform spline node, it can actually receive multiple matrices inputs. In the past, it cannot do. So it's really a good help nowadays. And there is also evaluate for. I simply just delete that because it's not common use. Delete the get a minimum and maximum because it has been replaced by a number list math. And there is a minimum and maximum option. I'm actually not using the latest version of animation nodes, but in the how should I say, the latest version, there will be more options. Basically the indices provided basically to fulfill the function that you can do in the past with the get minimum and maximum. Okay. There's also other nodes, and you can find actually some stupid stuff that I made, which is called a wheel camera. This preset has been there for very long time. You might sound weird. Why do these persons wiggle a camera with this node? But this is actually you don't necessarily use that. But I just want to say that I really use this preset library so that I make tons of stupid stuff which normal people may not really understand, but it's kind of idea. There is also a preset in 2.3 which is called a clock, and you're outputting the rotation for second, minutes, and hour. It's really kind of stupid, but it really it really works. And when you were trying to make a kind of clock, all these kind of clock, how should I say, the seconds and the minutes and the hour arrow. So it's kind of giving you correct rotations instead of your keep typing the drivers or other things. I'm not sure if you're interested in, but if you're interested in, we can discuss this sometime. Or it's kind of very simple. Just use object transform output and just duplicate it 3 times, and each time the object will be either the second arrow or the hour arrow or the minute pointer. Kind of idea. Kind of stupid thing. Which basically says if you're just trying to scheme it seems a lot of nodes, but it does not really take a lot of time to actually look at, oh, what does it actually do, like transform object. It's kind of just look at them, you get a kind of idea very easily, right? It's not very difficult, I think. It's just looking at the names, sometimes you can get a kind of idea. And I use lots of this preset within the tutorial as well. Other important things, actually, I would like to discuss several important things. Like there's some new nodes being added, which is called the LSystem Template. So just briefly discuss this kind of nodes. I'm not going to discuss this because it's a kind of important node, but I'm not going to discuss. I'm only going to discuss some tiny nodes which I think is kind of important. For example, Spline Displacer or the LSystem Template. Spline Tracer. What does it do? Oh, Spline Tracer. So previously, Spline Tracer, I've made a tutorial talking about simulation input, and within the tutorial, I've discussed many different things about the spline tracing. So you can use a spline tracers. I have an S at the end because in Blue Fox extension there is already a node which is called a spline tracer. Where's my Blue Fox extension? It does not contain the Blue Fox. Yes. Oh, it's called traceback arrow. Okay, we will discuss this later. But anyway, so this is the preset for spline tracer, which is specifically used for simulation nodes. You just get an output and set get a struct element, and then you can do this, and that. Kind of very simple, straightforward. Basically, a preset version of the what I have discussed in that tutorial. So briefly talking about the preset that I have made. The LSystem template is basically the LS system. This is, I think, it's concept in Houdini. Basically, usually to grow trees, but you can also try to make snowflakes kind of stuff. Usually, the method to work with this node has a routine setup that you put at rules, and then you add to cube, and then you need a mesh object output. This is the routine setup. If you try to add more function, you need maybe stuff more here, or maybe stuff more there, or maybe stuff more here. It's kind of complicated. So I basically converge most of functions within a single node. This is the first rule, because sometimes you do not want to add an extra rule extra node in order just to make a rule. But there is also a possibility of additional rules. These two sockets are parallel to each other. Okay. So even if you use the second socket, the first socket still applies. If you use the first socket, the second socket still applies. Kind of, they are parallel to each other. They are not conflicting to each other, and they work together. Basically, when you add targets, you get an F. There is a specific language or grammar, which you can find within text editor. This is basically, the command is basically just copied from the menu. So there's a F means forwards, and you can change with step size. Many different things you can try by yourself. I actually forgot the formula that I would like to make. Usually when you use the normal nodes, by hitting U or N, by hitting U you can see all this kind of formula. You just have to type by yourself. Okay. But if you click elsewhere, it will disappear. So usually I would just recommend to hit N. Then you can actually copy F or whatever. And there's lots of trees, whatever stuff. You can try to figure out by yourself. I'm not sure if I'm going to make a tutorial in the short term or not. But just to roughly see what we can actually get. One of the easiest methods is just to use F, so that it keep recursing itself. And let's add a FF plus F and plus F minus F. I'm just typing dumb stuff, and why it's actually decrease this radius factor and it keep the generation, then it keeps growing and kind of weird trees. This is how you work with this node, and you can increase the resolution. There is also a radius factor to control the thickness. I think I'm going to change the default value to lower, because I think this is awkward with these step size. So increase the step size, you get kind of weird trees. I think there is also a grammar that's scale width by width. Along X, rotate randomly, rotate with gravity. So you can try to, yeah, I think this is kind of it. I think you can try by yourself because it's kind of yeah, anyway, just kind of getting kind of idea, and you can really try by yourself. and the random angle. Just to know that this node contains a lot of hidden options. So you can choose the cap, scaling by size, gravity, whatever stuff. Also, JKM is actually important for instancing leaves or other things. There is also an option for straight mesh. This straight mesh means there is no edge to tubes, so everything disappears. But if you hit the edit mode, actually, where's my edit? If you hit the edit mode, you can see all these kind of lines. Why I keep all this? Why I keep a straight mesh? It's because you can use the find the shortest path. So this is one application. It's not necessarily a very good one, but if you take the curve object, you can see all these kind of things. So it's a single straight line that you can even trim. If you usually trim these nodes, use trim normalized, and then use the end. Well, where's my end? It does not really work. Okay, you also need a spline length filter. Maximum into place, length into length. So now it is a single tree. Looks kind of pretty cool, I think. Kind of idea. Anyway, next node that I really would like to talk about is the Spline Displacer node. This is one of the nodes that I really like. You can use geometry nodes to do that, but it really depends because it's kind of it's a little difficult to say. So basically, just to tell you what it does. Let's take a spiral. Once we have the spiral, distribute the circle spline from spline formation. So we have this circle, and we replicate this spline. Matrices, inks, and you can. I'm going to kill the radius, but the start as 1 and as 1.5 curve object output. And I'm going to keep this start size at 0. Probably this is better. And I'm going to keep everything as a cyclic. So now this looks kind of a, how should I say, circle, but it's just in reality, I'm not going to keep the amount. So this is how it really looks like. Nothing special. It looks kind of ugly. It's something like hypnomic. But if you take the Spline Displacer, so but once we have this cyclic, by default it does not have an amplitude. So by increasing the amplitude, you will see how this spine has been displaced. But there doesn't seem to be a rule inside. Okay, so you start to add a pulling frequency. If the pulling frequency is 0, it's using the wiggle node. But if you're using the pulling frequency, let's take that to 5. Then let's start to have rules. So increase the amplitude. And basically 0.1 is the by default value. And you can see how you can find a kind of a rule, how should I say, kind of pattern. A pattern within this displacing, while originally you do not have a pattern. And you can increase the amplitude. By increasing the amounts, so you can see how this pattern being generated. This pattern being kept, and you can, by increasing the frequency or increasing the amplitude. Okay, this is kind of idea. Definitely there's more options like re-evaluation, but I keep that off normally because I do not want to crash my computer. It's kind of performance heavy if anytime you re-evaluate something. But it's kind of idea. You can try to play around with yourself, and I definitely am going to fix that in very soon. So anyway, there's lots of more things that you can talk about within slides, but I think it would just be fine not to talk about them. Yeah, anyway, so I think this is it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Probably see you next time. Bye bye.